Hello and welcome to Coriolis Automated Cloud Migration and Disaster Recovery as a Service. In this video, we will be performing a migration transfer of an Ubuntu server virtual machine using VMware as a source platform and OpenStack as a destination platform. The entire process will be performed using our Coriolis appliance dashboard. After connecting to the dashboard with the provided credentials, we will have the menus for transfers representing all Coriolis replica tasks and the deployments representing Coriolis replica deployments and migrations. We can create a new task by selecting New from the top right corner, and from the list we will select Transfer. Here we will have the two options of replica and migration, where replica is used for incremental syncs of the VM data until we will run the deployment of the machine on the destination platform, while the migration runs the incremental syncs and the machine deployment in one task. As we will select migration, the first menu will ask us to select the source platform as well as its specific options. Here, for VMware, we will be provided with the option to enable CBT in the case that it is not enabled already on the VM. Next, we will have to select the VM or VMs from the platform pool. We will use just one VM represented by a Ubuntu server. To prove the full machine migration, we will create a text file on the machine before the migration process starts. When the source options are complete, we will move to selecting the target platform and its specifics, which will be applied on the VM in question. Here we will select OpenStack, and once the options are listed in simple view, we will have just the title of the machine as well as the temporary worker options, which will be used by Coriolis temporary resources to be deployed and to create the current machine. By selecting Advanced, we will be able to apply more customization for the resource allocation. Since we have all the options detailed in our Coriolis documentation, we will go only through the ones necessary for this case, starting with the availability zone, then the flavor, a keeper, a security group, and the usage of floating IP as well as the floating IP pool. After setting the options for the VM to be migrated, we will have to set the options for the Coriolis temporary resource, which will be represented by migration flavor name, image map for Linux, which will be mandatory, as well as Windows, where the Windows image is required only when migrating Windows machines. A network for the temporary worker will also be required. This network needs to be available for Coriolis to access, a floating IP pool, and the last options allowing the temporary worker to boot from volume alongside the volume type, and also using floating IP and config drives. Once these options are set, we will have to select the network to be attached to the VM and then the storage pool for its disks. Furthermore, we can push scripts to run on the machine at the OS morphing step during its migration process, and also a schedule where we can specify a date when the migration task should run. Next, we have the transfer execution options, with the default option to execute a task once we finish the step. Also, we have auto deploy, where if it is on, the machine will boot on the destination platform once migrated. Shutdown instances, allowing us through Coriolis to stop the VM on the source platform before the transfer starts. Clone disks, which is enabled by default. This will allow the disk synchronization between the source and destination platforms, and skip OS morphing. This option, which is meant for transfers between platforms of the same type. This option, if enabled, will stop Coriolis from applying the platform-specific drivers on the machine. The last page before starting the transfer is the summary, providing us with all the previously selected options. After it's started, Coriolis will list all the transfer steps that are performed, starting with validating the selected options for both source and destination options, creating empty disks on the destination platform, creating the disk snapshot on the source platform, creating the temporary resource on the destination platform, then attaching the previously created empty disk, and then starting to replicate the disks. When the disk transfer is complete, the temporary resources are deleted. Now, if we check the deployments page, Coriolis will validate the deployment inputs, creating the snapshots for the transfer disks, deploying the instance and OS morphing resources, perform the OS morphing process to remove VMware tools and apply platform-specific drivers, and once the machine is up and running on the destination platform, it will delete the temporary resources. When finalized, we can check on OpenStack dashboard if the machine is available, connect to it and list the created file just before starting the migration transfer. And as you can see, the Ubuntu instance became available on OpenStack. I will now connect to the instance and check the file created before starting the migration transfer. This guide sums up the capabilities of Coriolis to perform a migration transfer for a Ubuntu virtual machine using VMware as a source platform and OpenStack as a destination platform. Thank you.